All right, time for politics. The ANC's last NEC meeting before the conference begins tomorrow. Well, that NEC meeting has started. It will be held virtually, we understand, as delegates from different provinces start arriving in Johannesburg. The meeting will also hear confirmation on disciplinary processes against some members of parliament in relation to the Phala Phala report. Newzroom Afrika's Govan Whittles is keeping a watchful eye on the dynamics and the so-called balance of forces in the ANC. Govan, good morning to you once again. So the NEC meeting now effectively underway. Do we know if there are any developments coming out of that?
Well, this NEC meeting is receiving a report from the organizing committee in terms of whether they're ready for this conference. Another interesting report will be the state of readiness in terms of security. Only that is something that they're paying particular attention to this time. Yeah. So we were at NASREC a few days ago to collect our accreditation, and there is a heightened accreditation of security forces, saying possibly up to 500 members of the police that are being accredited to look after the delegates at this conference. We have to mention that because already there's speculation that there may be heated discussions there that will require the security forces to come in and make sure that it doesn't devolve into physical fights. There's already been a call by the former president, Jacob Zuma, saying that the organizational report needs to be delivered by the Secretary General, that the branches shouldn't allow anyone else to deliver that report. We understand that it's been developed by the Deputy President along with the Acting Secretary General, and they will deliver it. But these calls coming from outside, well, technically the former President can still take part in the NEC. They are significant. They give us some insight into the feeling ahead of this conference.
Well, it does seem that there are going to be fireworks indeed, but interesting call from former President Jacob Zuma that the organizational report, yes, it is the duty of the Secretary General to deliver that report, but the Secretary General, as we all know, is on suspension or step aside because of an ongoing case, court case against him. So who might this person be that the former President wants to deliver that report?
The former president clearly trying to incite the branches to insist that Ace Magashule should be allowed to come back. It's not the first time he's made that kind of a call. We've seen the former president Jacob Zuma try to influence the direction of the nominations towards this conference, and he failed, even saying that he was available for the position of national chairperson. He didn't meet the threshold for that position. He's been addressing a number of events.
And you remember Gwede Mantashe laughing it off. So, my goodness, it's going to be very interesting indeed. Govan, I interrupted you there, but I want us to take the viewers back to when you were here in the first hour of Newsfeed AM. You spoke about the Eastern Cape versus Gauteng, the leadership structures there. There does seem to be a war of words between these two provinces. Set the context.
Right. The first comment coming from Oscar Mabuyane, the chairperson of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, saying that, quote unquote, you want to elect leaders from provinces where they've lost elections. That can't be right because they'll come into the national leadership and will lose everything. That taken as a swipe at the Gauteng leadership where they've lost control of a number of metros in the province. Yesterday at the Provincial General Council, Panyaza Lesufi and Paul Mashatile responding to those comments. Panyaza Lesufi saying, quote, our schools are full of children from the Eastern Cape and we haven't chased them away. We are going to speak to the Eastern Cape leaders and ask them to retract that comment. Very direct.
Doesn't that remind you of the time when Helen Zille spoke about refugees who come from elsewhere in South Africa and flock to the Western Cape? Those comments, I mean, I'm not saying that what was said by Oscar Mabuyane is to be taken lightly in terms of the intra-politics within the ANC, but to now start along tribal lines, so to speak, I don't think that's something that should be welcomed by the party, is it?
Just one day before conference, it's not being welcomed by the party. When Panyaza Lesufi delivered those comments, you could see Paul Mashatile in the background feeling a little bit uneasy. When he got to the podium, he tried to put it in a more diplomatic way, saying in the ANC we are all one people and we need to unify the party going towards conference. This certainly is an issue that's going to affect how they deal with each other or negotiate for positions towards conference. Should point out Oscar Mabuyane and Paul Mashatile both contesting for deputy president. But let's move to some of the more interesting nominations and those who won't make it back into the NEC. I do believe that we've prepared some graphics here. I think the first point to raise is that this conference will see a number of prominent ministers, former ministers, retiring. There they are on the screen right now. And you'll see them. They're all retiring from the NEC. Look at that list, Oli. Those are significant people. We know about Baleka Mbete, but Pravin Gordhan, after the impact he's had on the NEC, finally stepping away here. Siyabonga Cwele stepping away as the main security force, really. And then look at Maite Nkwana Mashabane. She has really played a prominent role in the Zuma administration. She's not coming back in the next NEC. Okay, we knew about Derek Hanekom as well, but it looks like this NEC will lose a lot of those leaders who were seen as the core of the Zuma administration. And to point it out there you'll see that they were also fairly elderly leaders, and that speaks to them stepping aside, allowing for what the Youth League called the generational mix.
So just a point of clarity there, Govan. Are these people not coming back because they were not nominated in that 80-member NEC structure, or did they expressly say, I'm not available?
These are the ones that have said that they won't come back because they're not, they're retiring from the NEC. That's why we've put them up there saying they're former ministers that are not retiring. You mentioned something interesting, those ones that didn't get enough nominations, and I've prepared a slide on that as well. Let's have a look at who they are. There you'll see them early. Let's begin with Tito Mboweni. Right, his position was always going to be precarious going towards this conference, particularly because of the kind of engagement he had at the NEC. Remember, he prepared that economic policy document after conference, which everyone said was a departure of the conference line. So we knew that was going to be. But look at the former president of COSATU, Stumar Dlamini, not getting enough votes to make it past the threshold to get into the NEC. That's quite interesting. Mosebenzi Zwane, even though he was seen as a popular leader, his popularity seems to have dwindled. I've put Feroz Kachalia there because he was in the NEC for a very long time. His departure represents something significant, particularly for that non-racial element within the ANC, which he was championing there. And then Ngwako Ramatlodi, not being nominated. Remember that the former president accused him of being a spy, and he denied that. You know,
in fact, he challenged him. He challenged him to, I think it was a lie detector test, to say, let's go for this so that I can prove that I'm not a spy. I remember that very well. I don't think the former president responded to that.
He didn't meet that challenge. He didn't produce any evidence that he was telling the truth either. You know, nevertheless, Ngwako Ramatlodi's name, not among those who have received the NUST. And then Dikeledi Magadzi, she's the deputy minister. And she hasn't received enough nominations. And then just this final slide here, Oli. I know we're talking about those who've got nominations, but here are a few interesting nominations. These ones did receive enough nominations to pass the threshold. Cheslin Mostert I've put up there because he's emerged as a funder, significant businessman in the Western Cape whose popularity is increasing. He was accused in reports of funding a number of branches. And in the same vein as the Treasurer General nominee, Bejali Chauke. Look at Mcebisi Jonas being nominated here. He could potentially come in and fill the shoes of Pravin Gordhan if he had to come into the NEC. He's notorious for declining nominations, isn't he? So we'll see what happens. Then Kusela Diko, and then Ibrahim Rasool trying to make a comeback there. We'll see whether or not he gets the approval, but the fact that his name is being raised speaks to the Western Cape's power of the lobby. And then Dina Pule, well, we saw this morning speaking for the ANC Women's League. She's certainly got a lot of traction among delegates. Those are just a few of the nominations. I think we'll keep on doing this, having a look at some of the interesting figures that emerge towards the conference.
Very, very interesting names that you've put up on that last slide. Mcebisi Jonas, and you say he's notorious for declining nominations. Has he made any statement whether he's accepting or declining nomination? Because he's firmly in business now, as I understand it.
He is in business. He's not spoken just yet. Usually that indication comes from the floor. The fact that he's been quiet or quieter towards this conference could be an indication that perhaps he doesn't want to lobby too much. But clearly the branches still think he's a formidable leader and someone who should be included in the future of the ANC. He'll certainly be someone to watch going towards conference, and we'll have to keep a close eye on him.
All right, and hopefully we'll bump into him at that conference. Begins tomorrow. Lots of work ahead for you and I and the rest of the team here at Newzroom Afrika. Govan Whittles putting us in picture there. He's working very hard behind the scenes. Still to come.